Well, this week has not been the best week. On Monday morning, I woke up and I was doing a workout in my garden. Doing an ab session is always my first session of the week. And, well, something kind of popped in my abs and turns out it was like a little hernia. Yeah, so I had to go to the hospital and basically, long story short, no golfer exercise for a week minimum. And kind of ease back in after that. And obviously that means it's really difficult for me to film for you guys as I can't get out onto the golf course. I played at the end of last week and I thought we could take a little look at some of those videos, go through and have a look at what my swing looked like and talk through it, what I think about it, what I'm going to work on moving forwards. Because when you guys sent me all those videos of your swings, there is a lot of common flaws basically that I myself am working on. So I thought it would be really helpful to kind of talk through those and also talk through what I'm thinking in my head about my own swing and how I'm planning to make changes and some of the drills and swing thoughts and stuff that I'm working on at the moment. So let's dive straight in. Let's throw these videos up on the screen for you guys. So I'm in the net, I'm warming up for my round, I'm going through some feels. Let's have a look at some of my practice swings. Now this is one drill that I like to do without a club, and it's actually a David Ledbetter drill where you basically slide one hand down one leg and one hand up the other leg just to get the feeling of pivoting properly, getting kind of steeper hip and shoulder planes. And then I'm actually squatting down to really keep that flexion in the hips and then try and get the feeling like my left hip really moves back. Let's have a little look at this swing in the net. So there are a few things in this takeaway in the backswing that I'm going to talk about a little bit later, but let's have a little look at my posture as well. It's pretty good. I would say my spine angle is maybe a little bit too much over the ball. The weight looks like it's very much over my toes. I'd maybe like to straighten my legs a little bit, be a bit more upright, have my arms a little bit more in front of me instead of hanging down so much, and also raise that grip of the club up a little bit as well. That's definitely something I'm going to be working on moving forwards, and I bet so many of you don't even think about your posture, your setup, when you're looking at your golf swing or even when you're practicing, and it is the first thing you should be looking at because it has a knock-on effect to every single thing in your swing. So we won't talk about too much about this takeaway and backswing. It's okay, but it needs some work. As we get to the top, pretty good straight flat wrist, good pivot, good amount of hip turn, and then club shallows out nicely. I keep my hips back, which is what I was working on here. Maintaining flexion in my hips and maintaining my spine angle. Take a look at driver now in the net, still before my round, just warming up. I always like to hit just a couple drivers. Setup with driver I'd say is actually a bit better. You're always going to be a little bit more upright with driver. As we take it away, yeah, that needs some work. Getting to the top, let's pause it there. I used to have a very strong left hand grip and I've recently tried to weaken it. But for some reason, with some of my longer clubs, I do tend to strengthen it still. As you can see at the top here, my left wrist is flat, but the club face is actually a little bit closed, so that's a good indication that my left hand grip is strong, basically. If the club face were open in that position, left hand grip would be a bit weak. Ideally, I'm looking for them to kind of match up and, be the same exact angle. So as we play this down, I'm really exaggerating that feeling of squatting, keeping the flexion in my hips. I would say my pivot isn't as good with driver and the longer clubs. It's just something I need to work on. And as we come down, shallows nicely, but the club face is a bit closed and a bit flat, and that's something that's caused by my setup just being a little bit too over it, having my arms hanging down a little bit too much instead of a little bit more out in front of me. I maintain my posture just before impact. I do start to early extend a little bit, and that makes me lose my spine angle. So let's take it out onto the course, and the first shot we're going to have a look at is with driver. At the moment, the driving range at my golf club is actually closed, So it's very, very difficult for me to practice at the moment, which is one reason I'm filming my swing in the net and on the golf course, just so I can actually work on some things basically. Otherwise you'll just get into bad habits and you'll take them onto the course and you won't understand why you're hitting certain bad shots. Understanding your golf swing is the key to playing better golf. Knowing why you hit a bad shot and being able to correct it so that you don't follow it up with a bad shot. So this angle isn't quite down the line, it's not quite in line with my feet, but we should be able to see. One thing I noticed when I was actually on the course filming this swing, as I take it back to the top, if we pause it there, obviously my grip's a little bit better here, or it kind of looks like it is from this angle, but my hands and my arms are a little bit higher than I would like them to be above my shoulder plane. This is a tendency I do have with the longer clubs. With the shorter clubs, I do tend to keep it kind of lower and around my body, and with the longer clubs, I do tend to get my hands and arms a bit higher just to generate more speed and more room and kind of more power and have a little bit of a longer swing. But it's not necessarily a good thing, because for me, I then have to make adaptations to my spine angle, my posture, early extension, all these things in order to self-correct that movement. And as we swing down, you are going to notice I early extend up into the ball, lose my spine angle, and this drive was very much off the toe, although it was actually a pretty good drive. It kind of started out right and just drew back a little bit. So it was a good drive, but the swing wasn't good, and that's kind of what we're really talking about and focusing on here. Because I'm practicing and I'm on the course, I do tend to experiment with different swing thoughts and different feels and then see how it affects the ball flight and obviously record it as well. So through my round, I was developing kind of an idea in my head of what this thought or what this feel is going to produce in terms of results on my ball flight, and also what it's going to look like. So on this swing, this was actually a really good shot, and the downswing looks pretty nice. This is a 7-iron, by the way, on a par 3. I think it was about 170 yards. Again, we'll talk about the backswing a little bit later, but as we get to the top, not a bad position, but again, my hands and arms do look a little bit higher than I'd like them to. I typically like them just to sit just below my shoulder plane. Not a bad pivot. It does look like my hips have turned a little bit flat instead of kind of pivoting. It again looks like my grip could be a little bit strong. Also, as we swing down into the ball, you're going to notice I do lose my height a little bit and my head's going to drop, but I do a good job of keeping my hips back and actually kind of maintaining that spine angle, which was what I was working on when I was hitting this shot. And it was a good shot. As I said, it was middle of the green, nice 7-iron, perfect distance, but I wasn't 100% happy with the swing. And that's one thing I do find important to know, is that you can hit a good shot with a bad swing, or you can hit a bad shot with a good swing if it's just not quite matched up, or you may need to change something else what you're working on. Okay, so now we're getting towards the end of the round. We're on hole number 7. This was actually a pitching wedge. Now again, the angle isn't great, but this was actually a pretty good swing and a really good shot. It was straight down the flag. I just came up a little bit short on the distance. But we're going to see here that I do tend to turn my hips again a little bit flat as we take it to the top, but those arms and hands are sitting much, much lower, which was something I was working at during this swing and I was trying to feel. My hips stay pretty much back. My spine angle is pretty good as well, and it was a good strike compressed down onto the ball. Nice little shallow divot. Now this again was a pretty good shot. I was also trying to feel during these swings, like after I rotated and turned my hips out the way, like I was actually trying to get my hips to point up more towards the sky. This is basically a feeling I use to keep my tilt in my upper body back, keep my kind of upper body behind where my hips are, because I do have a tendency to fire my hips and turn out the way, and then I'll basically be changing my spine angle, which again is something I think a lot of golfers of all levels do and struggle with. They fire their hips and they just turn their hips out the way instead of kind of maintaining their spine angle and pivoting and using their hips and lower body to the best effect. Because all we hear really is how important rotation is in our golf swings, and rotation, all these videos about how to rotate, and they don't really talk about how to rotate properly or some of the issues if you can't rotate, because rotation in a golf swing heavily relies on athleticism and mobility, and for the average person, we don't have that. Dustin Johnson is the example I always use. He's 6'4", I think. He has a wingspan that's even wider than that, so he's got super long arms. He's super mobile. He's super athletic. He does a lot of gym work, a lot of training, flexibility, mobility training. And you can see that in his golf swing. He's able to get himself into positions that we just aren't. So let's take a look at this swing. 3 hybrid. It was a really good shot. I mean, it was exactly where I was aiming. You can see the ball take off. Just a little draw. Again, my hips turn a little bit flat, which is something I'm working on, trying to pivot more with my lower body instead of simply just turning, because that can get you into problems with your spine angle and early extension then coming through impact. If you don't use your lower body correctly in the takeaway, you're probably not going to use your lower body correctly when you swing down and into the ball. If we pause it at the top, we can see again, I would say my hands are sitting maybe a little higher than I would probably like them to, but we are talking only a little bit. Grip again is a little bit strong, so we're seeing a pattern here between all of my swings, really, aren't we? The hands are a little bit higher, grip maybe a little bit strong, and not pivoting and using my body as well as I would possibly like to. And we're going to see that as we come down into impact. The club's in a good position, but I'm going to early extend a little bit and again lose my spine angle. Now, a lot of you might be thinking, well, what's the problem with that if it was a good shot? Well, the problem is, it puts a lot of strain through your back. And golf is a repetitive sport. So if you're repeating the same motion over and over and over again, and you're putting a lot of strain through certain areas, then eventually you're going to get injured. There's just only so much one area of your body can take. And for me, I really want to be playing golf throughout the rest of my life as much as I can. I don't want to be playing for 5 or 10 or 15 years and then get injured and, not be able to play when I'm older. Because let's face it, that happens a lot. And that could be caused by other injuries in other areas of life or sports, but a lot of the time it's caused from golf. So then let's move on to the last swing of the day. This is the last hole. Beautiful sun coming in. Absolutely amazing day for some golf. And this again was a really good shot. I was starting to find some swing thoughts and feels that were working for me towards the end of this round. If we slow it down, let's talk about the takeaway, because we haven't touched on that yet, and this is a really good swing to try and understand what my thought is with this takeaway versus what I want it to look like. Now basically, a lot of you know that I am using currently Scott Stallings as a model for my own golf swing, and Scott has a really good takeaway. It's nice and compact, arms and everything's very connected, and it gets him into a really great position at the top. My takeaway is definitely not as good. If we rewind about a year to when I did some work with Dan Whitaker, at that time my hand path went quite away from my body in the takeaway, and then I rolled the club inwards to kind of counterbalance that, if you will. Now, at the moment, we're actually trying to do the opposite of that. We want our hands moving in and around our body, staying connected, but we want the club staying outside of our hands. And if we take the club away and have a look at this, I don't do that how you would really think. I basically just pick the club up. If we look at where my hands are and play this back a few times, my hands aren't really moving inwards and around my body. They're kind of just moving up. But if we get to the top of the backswing here, I am in a pretty good position. Again, hips are a little bit flat, but that again, something we're talking about. But it was a good shot. I used my body pretty well. I do have a little bit of an open club face here. and it did go quite high and was a little bit spinny. Again, came up a little bit short, but it was still a good strike. It was still a pretty good shot. I just didn't quite control the spin, and that's why it came up a little bit short. So what have we learnt from all of that? So for me, some of the things I'm working on, if we list them off the top, first of all, in my setup, to be a little bit more upright, a little bit straighter legs, not quite so over my toes, a little bit more up, and to then counterbalance that, I can't have my arms and hands so low, I have to bring them up, raise the handle up a little bit as well, which will definitely help with strike and a lot of things. Then, after that, takeaway, we want the hands and arms moving inwards around our body. So to me, it's actually going to feel like my hands and my arms are moving almost in towards behind my right hip. Still using our body to take the club away, not just moving with our hands and arms. Also using my lower body pivot better, so getting slightly steeper shoulder and hip planes. And as we take the club to the top, getting that shaft more vertical, pointing down towards the ground. As we get to the top, obviously making sure that my left hand grip is a little bit weaker, which would obviously be included in the setup as well, but you can just tell a bit more when you get to the top of the backswing. Keeping my hands and arms a little bit lower, a little bit below the shoulder plane. Then as we swing down, making sure I don't early extend, I maintain my spine angle, hips move actually towards the target to help me maintain my spine angle almost before I start rotating really. And after that, it's pretty much all of those things we talked about coming together to match up and hit a really good shot. I highly recommend videoing your own swing or having a look at a video you've got and thinking about all the things I've just mentioned, having a look and be really critical of your own swing and think, am I doing that correctly? Okay, tick it off the list. Am I doing that correctly? Okay, no, I need to go work on that. Because these are things, yes, I'm working on them, but with all of the swings you guys sent in to me for one of the last videos, they were all things that pretty much, I think, almost every person needed to work on. I don't think there was one golf swing that had perfect posture, and I don't think there was even a golf swing that had no early extension, really. This is why I thought this video would be really helpful to you guys, because these are really important things in the golf swing. We're talking about really good fundamentals that pretty much every level of tour player does really well, but every amateur golfer pretty much doesn't do. I really hope this video has helped you guys, has taught you something. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. I'm bringing you guys tons and tons of videos at the moment during isolation. I hope you guys are staying safe and healthy, by the way. And if you have learned something, please do hit that thumbs up. Really appreciate it. And I will see you guys in the next video. Grip it and rip it.